Good morning, everyone. Ms. Curran, if we could roll call and call the criminal justice meeting to order, please.
Roll call. Councilmember Thomas.
Present.
Councilmember Moreno. Present. Councilmember Morel. Councilmember Harris. Here. Councilmember King. We have a quorum. Let the record reflect that Councilmember.
Move to approve the minutes of the July 12th meeting.
I'll second.
Second by Councilmember Marino, moved by me, I'll move and second it. All in favor? The minutes are approved. Next item, please. Good morning, everyone.
The next item on the agenda is a discussion regarding the creation of a criminal justice community advisory task force.
We have some representatives here. I think Mr. Johnson and Mr. Valier. We're now ready to talk about the community advisory, creation of community advisory. And yes, in private conversations with the chief, she has mentioned that she's not opposed to a citizen or community advisory committee. You guys have issued statements and briefs and releases in the past several months talking about the need for citizen or community advisory. So if the chief isn't opposed to it and you guys have asked for it, what does that look like as it relates to what you guys would like to see? And then we'll hopefully get together with the chief and talk about what that looks like and hopefully come up with something representative of what both sides want. With Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to address the committee. We have given you our position for today's conversation. So hopefully you have that and you can pull from that as we go through it. No, they should.
Did you pass it out to each council member, or each committee member?
Hey, we're going to get them to you.
Okay, all right.
We're going to get them.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. Thank you, Deidre.
Yeah, we have been fighting for 13, 14 years or more to have the citizens, the people, the grassroots community involved in decision-making process for the NOPD. We have looked long and hard. We have heard, and as you will see on the position paper that we gave you, there is a quote from someone who was unidentified, but this was basically the feeling of many of the people that came to our forums that we had across the city. And let me read this to you quickly. I'm looking at most of the boards, committees, and commissions in the city. I really do not see a cross-section of people that I feel actually represents the common, typical New Orleanian. I mean, those people who are in the high percentages of people who live below the poverty level and the working poor who live paycheck to paycheck. Now, it is important that we get across to you so you can get across to the new chief of police that we are sick and tired of having blue ribbon people who are not connected to the real community of New Orleans put on boards and commissions. We need people who come into constant contact with the police to be on these boards and commissions, to be able to have a say. If the new police chief is serious about participation from citizens, then she needs to include the segment of people that are affected most by the police department. And those are usually unemployed, underemployed, poor, and the downtrodden. And if she can embrace the people who are most affected by the NOPD, then possibly she should be able to get some things done in this city. Now, I know in most of the instances that I've been involved with, there's always police, NOPD officers involved in these kinds of committees. And I'm not saying we do not need to involve them because they need to hear it firsthand as well. But we need more officers that are genuinely embraced by the community to be on these committees as well. And that is essentially where we're coming from, and that is what we understand is needed and necessary for the NOPD to move forward with a positive program that's going to show some lasting results. I want to turn over to our brother Ed Parker.
Mr.
Good
Parker.
morning. What we envisioned when we looked at this selection, we saw if you don't communicate and you don't have a partnership with the community, everything is gonna fail. We're gonna have another, I called her, hired gun, come in the city, make a big old salary, do a whole lot of talk, and we the people will not be involved. We have never had a chance to sit down with the chief during this whole process to just ask our pointed questions. Example, we just had a tragedy last week out there in New Orleans East. It would have been great to have her have a plan where she would tell us just what is her plan for staffing all of the districts in the city, especially the largest district that we have in District E. We want to ask her that. What were the problems she had in Oakland when she had these problems with the Black policeman? Something is wrong there. And also, what was really her partnership with the Black community in Oakland? She has to have a partnership with us. The external committee, selection committee, the internal commission. Take a look at the names. Business people, police. Councilman Thomas, you were on it, along with the Reverend. That did not satisfy us, and that did not satisfy most of the Black community. We need a cross-section of everyone for her to be successful. Thank you.
We're going to now go to our female advisor and have her say a few words. Ms. Annette.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Ness.
Our main concern is having participation within the community. We reach out to the community, and when you guys show up for our events, we totally appreciate it because it shows that you're involved and you care. So we just want to make sure that she knows that we need to have community input in order for any system to work. You get your community leaders together. She needs to know to be involved with the community leaders. And we just want to make sure she's going to do a good job. I'm sorry I've been missing for so long, but I think you understand why. But you know, that's our main goal, is to make sure that she knows that we need to be involved. We want our community to be successful. to be greater than what it is.
That, I'm going to go to the hammer and have him address you as well. Gary?
All right. We take a look at who influenced the police service in this city. You got the Police Association of New Orleans, the Fraternal Order of Police seem to be involved in not just the day-to-day operations, but the selection process. We had some of those officers from those organizations that were, I think, were part of the selection committee. When I look at New Orleans Police and Justice Foundation, I looked at the list of who's with that organization, that board, and I go down the list, and I didn't see us. I didn't see the community. I didn't see the people, the average person from the 9th Ward or the 7th, the 8th or 6th Ward or the 3rd Ward or nobody I knew lived in any housing developments. Nobody I knew struggled as a child, not knowing where the next meal was going to come from. Nobody that I knew had been evicted. Nobody that I knew had utilities turned off. Those people those people don't represent us. I was one of those kids. I might have jacked Eugene out his bike as a child. I'm not sure. But,
He took your bike.
we
He gave it back to you.
But when we see, I'm out of there. Left it down in the 9th Ward.
And we took it. And we took it from you.
So, well, to get back to we, the community, the grassroots community, the people who are still struggling after generations. There's still families in this city where waiting for the first person to graduate from high school. There's still families in this city that don't have a high school graduate. That's real. So when I see the fancy committees and the fancy boards and fancy commissions, those are the political elite, the blue bloods in the city. They're making decisions. It's not working. The gentleman, I think he was the vice president of Police Foundation. I went back and found an interview he did with Channel 4 a couple of years ago. And it wasn't pleasant to watch because I know he didn't have a clue about what he was talking about when he talked about policing us. We in this consent decree because historically the disenfranchised, the people who are abused the most, done things too that they think is not going to come to light, are us. The Black community, I'm just saying. We look at who's in the jails, we check the arrest blocks, who we're taking the guns off of. I mean, it's us. And us as the community, we got to stop it and admit that we have a serious problem with us. Setting the parameters for how we want to be policed, who polices us, what's fair and what's not. We need to be involved with that. The whole consent decree came about. I mean, we did a timeline for the last 20 years. We see it's justified to be under this consent decree. When we look at PIB and the way they discipline officers, it's not working. We wonder why some officers that have done things are still on the job. Payroll fraud, that by itself, get demoted and then get your money back, get your position back. That's just one thing. We don't know if New Orleans has a Brave Cave, the thing in Baton Rouge, And if you haven't had a chance to see the video with the police chief addressing the council in Baton Rouge, look that up. I'll send a link to you. Have any of y'all saw that yet? The chief addressing it? We just share that. The rest of the council see that. He told the truth. about how his hands are tied by the police union and the business interests and the political interests. So they tried to dump that on him, and he did the right thing. He told the truth. I don't know what's going to cost him politically or career-wise.
He's retiring at the end of the
Yeah,
year.
November, he's gone. Right, yeah, I'm hoping he come home and he's a resident, grew up in the Lower Ninth Ward. Right. So we need to look around and find some best practices from other places. You know, I looked at Oakland, and they were doing this fight that we're doing right now 15 years ago.
Against the same person.
Against the same person. Minor changes are made, but you know, and what's always missing and what happened out there was when the community did get to the table, politics and other things, finger pointing, bringing up old stuff, got in the way of making progress. So I think what we're proposing is that we get involved. We sit and we pay, the citizens, the taxpayers pay these people that have abused us. And there's no way for us, the general public, just to cut off the money other than to stop paying taxes. You know, but what we saw with you guys with oversight recently, in the one incident with the misspending of money, and the way that was handled, great. But that could have been done, I mean, I could think of 3 or 4 instances where that could have been done with NOPD officers. They could have been brought here and asked to answer for their actions. And I don't think they don't have a contract. And I don't know about the civil service protect them from any discipline. But if y'all can't do it, form a panel made up of the citizens so that at least when these things happen, we see them, we can advise y'all on what make us feel good about how to discipline these things. And like I said, what we want is a seat at the table to determine how we are policed, what policies we feel are going to work. You know, things from the, again, failed efforts, the recruiting, the video that came out, that didn't work. You got 2 police gurus down here from New York. We don't know how much money was spent on them, and they were supposed to have a plan that was supposed to do something. That didn't work. Nobody asked us. Nobody asked the public. You have any ideas? You want to come to the table and discuss some things that might work? I think we have some ideas. I think we put together plans. I think we submitted plans to you guys of what we think might work. None of that stuff's been moved on. We have, we don't have the equivalent of the New Orleans Police and Justice Foundation. We need you guys to support us, back us up, push us to the table so that we can help solve some of these problems.
Councilmember Green.
Just for the sake of full disclosure, I'm going to an event at Suno and it starts at 11. So I have to leave at 10:35, give myself 20 minutes to get there and 5 minutes to the building. So that's the only reason I interrupted your presentation. But I do want to let you know that those organizations that you mentioned, yeah, they were just formed. They just formed the Police and Justice Foundation. We don't pass something saying that this exists. I agree that a community driven advisory task force would be great. The details are so important, but I agree with you that any amount of community input is going to be very helpful to not only the police, because this is what I emphasize a lot. If we want to make our communities safer, we got to recognize, of course, that it's not just the police. It's also the judges. It's also the magistrates. It's also the system, whether or not it's giving training and whether it's giving resources to people before they come back out. But starting with the police is a fine idea, but I believe that the Community Advisory Task Force is a good idea. I caution you because I will tell you that I disagree when people say that we haven't heard. We meet with a criminal justice committee once a month. Once a month, just as we are here today. It can be brought to us at any time. We meet with the police chief and all areas of the criminal justice system every quarter. And the public has a chance, and some people have put in their cards on that. But I recognize that when there are maybe opportunities to include, for example, a member of the community, we don't sometimes know where to go. If we form a task force, the mayor, for example, might have included a member of the community advisory task force if it existed. I shouldn't have used the mayor as an example, but an elected official might have done that if that task force exists. So I want to encourage you to complete the process, which is to become official so that you might be able to get some resources. That's important. Also have a regular gathering so that people can come from the community and give their input and invite not just the police, but look at the entire criminal justice system. In fact, you're calling it the Criminal Justice Community Advisory Task Force. That's extremely important because the criminal justice system is so much larger than just the New Orleans Police Department. They make a lot of arrests, but at the end of the day, if we want our community to be safer, we've got to look at some of the things that are being done, and it's complex. Domestic violence, for example, which we experienced last week. Some matters such as Gwynn's Law hearings, the unwillingness of our system to do more of those type activities. If the overall end goal is safety in our community, it's certainly going to have to be bigger than the police. But I'm looking forward to the Criminal Justice Community Advisory Task Force. If it gets formed, I just want to encourage you to recognize that I only remind the public and those who are watching that this council has a meeting every month on criminal justice, and we're open to all suggestions. And we have a quarterly where we gather all of the aspects of the criminal justice system to come before the public, but we're very open to ideas.
Any council members' comments? Councilmember Harris.
Thank you for your presentation. I would point out that there is PCAB, which is the Police Community Advisory Board. Have y'all taken a look at becoming members of any of the PCABs, or what are your thoughts on that?
Fifth District PCABs, I would go to non-pack meetings and the PCABs before COVID, even during COVID. PCAB to me seemed to be an arm of police, the Lawrence Police and Justice Foundation. They kind of push to each other. I didn't feel like PCAB was I mean, it was open to anybody. I heard about it and went to it. Anybody could hear about it and went to it. And most members of the community, when you say police, they don't go to. They're not going to go walk in the Fifth District station and sit in a meeting, or they're not going to go to an event that says police because they're leery. You know, we still have to get past that piece. But I didn't find PCAB to be. It was a social thing. We're going to make sure that the police officers have donuts, and make sure you wave at them when they pass by. That's not. We need something. We need a community, a real New Orleans grassroots-based community PCAB. Not a PCAB that I went to where 7 people on the steps at Nichols High School, Douglas, whatever it is now, to do a march. And I was the only one that had lived in New Orleans. Another guy was born in New Orleans, went to school somewhere else and came back home, but I didn't feel us at PCAB. I didn't feel New Orleans.
I would like to just ask you to look at PCAB as well as all of the other groups that have been created over the last 15 years. And tell me, what have they accomplished?
Well, I mean, I guess, and that's my question is what I get in essence what y'all are talking about, but for me, and this is just how my brain thinks, structurally, what does it look like? What are your goals? What do you aim to accomplish? How do you, to Councilmember Green's point, how would you advise not only the police chief, but also the DA, the chief judges, all aspects of the criminal justice system? And I guess that's what I just would want to know more of, is the bones of this organization, and also the membership, because while I understand that and I'm looking at these PCAB districts and I see some folks who are from the community, who aren't the blue bloods that you're talking about on specifically the 6th district PCAB. But how can you have a mix of community members that are both from the community and even outsiders who might be able to also inform? I always find that a mix of people is where you get the best ideas from, having diverse thoughts and ideas. To your point about not just having the upper echelon advise, but having a mix of people who can really take that forward. So I guess I just want to know structurally how this happens. How often would you meet? You know, just the nitty-gritty details.
You know, you don't have to be a blue blood to represent the blue bloods. And structurally, the grassroots has never been allowed to structurally do anything in major cities because of the political aspect that's involved. You ask about the judges and the DA. That's fine. But even with them in their own structure, politics always gets in the way. We can't advance to where we need to be because of the political consideration that has to be given in order to proceed with the structure that is in place today.
I get that, but I really wonder, like, just basic things, meeting times, how often do you meet? How are you going to get membership? You know, can we attend? I just want to understand, and this is how my brain thinks, functionally, how this all operates. Is there a set meeting time? Is there a set meeting place? Do you have goals and outcomes that you're wanting to get to?
Yes, we do. And we also have the ability to put a structure together. You're asking us for a structure on the fly. And I'm telling you, we need to be able to sit down and produce a structure that's going to be meaningful and acceptable. They can't do that on the fly.
Can I add something to your excellent question? Given us, we came together, we were 7 or 8 different, maybe 10 of us, came together late last year to make sure that there was going to be a Martin Luther King parade, a King Day parade. You were there, Councilman. We put this group, different groups. I'm a pro-Second Amendment guy. I'm a gun guy. I'm a gun safety responsibility advocate. That was my piece. How do we stop some of the killers by educating the community? That was everybody else has been here decades. They've been involved in activism long before I was. As a city employee, I couldn't. We're new. But I think we've done a hell of a job addressing things we see pop up, helping defend people we see were wronged, helping bring to light people we saw were abusive in the system. We get all kinds of phone calls from all kinds of people asking us to help them. So we haven't built we don't have an office, we don't have a building, we don't have a shared computer or a desk. Most of the stuff we're doing, ass and face, I call it, on the fly. We make a phone call, we get a conference call, or we have a coffee in the kitchen, and we try to get things done. I think we do pretty good for that. There's things that I think would help us participating more and engaging more with political officials, with the business community. Some of these, if we can go to some of these committee meetings or foundation meetings or commission meetings or whatever, to nip some things in the bud. But what we have is a group of people with a collective will to make some change. And I guess we come to you guys most of the time for support and to be heard. There's a couple of things that I'd recommend all citizens do. And there's some indifference to it. I did it only because I was curious. The NOPD Citizens Academy. What it did more than anything else is help me understand the structure and how it's built and how it's supposed to function. There's also the FBI Citizens Academy. But it did give some insight as to what these people really do, what they're supposed to do on a day-to-day basis. So encouraging people to participate in PCAB, finding out what the community engagement officer is doing and being there to engage them to put some input into how we think the community ought to be working, those things. But again, we're new, we're infants, we're babies in this as a group. So when you ask that, we're working on it. And we're doing the best we can with what we have. And Councilman Green mentioned getting some money, creating a foundation or a nonprofit, maybe. I get that. But with that comes influence. I've always told them, if you start having to handle money, I'm out. You can't. People have offered to write me checks for my 2A coffee group. I won't take any money because I got to give you some influence.
Councilmember.
Yeah. Couple of points to your earlier point about the MLK parade last year. That's an excellent example of kind of the disconnect between city government and people. We have had the same parade for decades, and there seemed to be a political will at that time to silence a group of people that might have participated in that parade. So they created a new process that no one asked for, which was highly curated, that had no ability to have public input, no public participation. And I remember talking to Reverend Ortiz, who was here previously, because she was someone that used to be heavily involved with that. And there was a long understanding that even when you had political conflict, the parade was sacred, because many of the people that were in charge of putting together the parade, they never necessarily got along with politicians. In fact, many of them didn't.
Right.
But it was, this is something we all agree on. This is a priority. And for many people, this is when you saw the community and the political class together on the street, accountable, walking that same route. The route occasionally was shortened or lengthened, but that was the time where together we're unified on Dr. King's birthday to show unity. And what I saw last year was disunity. And I don't know if this was be corrected for this year coming up. If it's not corrected, I certainly would like to work with y'all on the front end on getting the parade more organized than it was, because last year y'all were caught pretty flat-footed.
Yeah.
Where I think you guys found out for the most part about a week or 2 weeks in advance, it wasn't happening. So you threw something together and
5 days.
We have 5
5
days.
days, 5 days. So
Yeah.
participation wasn't what it could be, because many of the groups, the bands, everyone who participated, they didn't show up because they thought there wasn't going to be a parade. So I'll work with y'all to see this year. If it's not going to happen again, let's work together to make sure it's a full parade, because I appreciate what y'all will throw together with some very short time. I certainly hear you on the fact that a lot of the traditional mechanisms for community involvement have not worked. I will tell you that something that we have to really reassess is the officer of police monitor. Theoretically, I know Mr. Batiste has some experience with her, but that is supposed to be a person who is only accountable to the community. The whole reason why it was created the way it was and enshrined in the charter is that that office is not beholden to any political person. They're not appointed by the mayor, they're not appointed by the council, they're appointed by the ethics board, but once they're appointed, they can be removed for cause, which is why you've seen historically, there have been some times where the monitor has stepped out more than anyone else has, because they do have some insulation from those class politics. So whatever organization y'all come up with, I would encourage you to make her or that office a part of it, because they have been accountable to the community. And I would argue, out of every organization that interacts with the NOPD, they interact with the community the most. I mean, I will tell you from my experience dealing with both previous monitors, they actively make community engagement the hallmark centerpiece of how they operate. So whatever organization or structure you come up with, I know they want to be involved. I certainly agree with you. Obviously, we're all in receipt of your letter that came during confirmation last week, the full council vote. I thought many of the things that were included in your list of demands were certainly doable. The problem for a council is we can't make confirmation contingent upon something. I will tell you in my conversation with the chief, I've said, if you want to get the community to buy into what you're doing, you need to look at these things because many of them are manageable and are pretty common sense. And I think that for any chief to be successful in the city, they have to have community buy-in. Whether it have been Chief Woodfork, whether it's Chief Kirkpatrick, if the community does not consent to being policed, you will always be limited in how successful you can be. So I've certainly, from my perspective, spoken to the chief and said, everything you were requesting seemed reasonable. And I think it's something that any chief should consider. The last thing is to say that I was disappointed in that selection process would be an understatement. I think that many of you bought into what we bought into, which when a national selection began, we all wanted there to be community engagement, and we made that a hallmark of our call. I would certainly say that there are a tremendous amount of positions that remain to be filled that require confirmation. The next one up is Public Works. I would certainly say, and I will certainly transmit to the administration, there needs to be community engagement with all these large appointments. Because if you look at construction projects throughout the city, if you look at the prioritization of streets and sidewalks and the like, there has always been an argument of have and have not neighborhoods. And I know from even before this council or the previous council came to this dais, there was always a sense post-Katrina, a lot of resources were concentrated in neighborhoods that were repopulated and fine, and not a lot of resources were spent in neighborhoods where it could have led to people coming back. So though the police chief confirmation is done, as we have more confirmations, you will see that same confirmation process. I will continue to encourage the administration to really have more public community dialogue, potential selections, because all those appointments are very important. And the next one up is Department of Public Works. Thank you.
Thank you.
As
Hold on, Mr. Parker, any other comment from Councilman
Councilperson
Marino,
Harris,
Councilmember Parker?
to get into.
Council, yeah, you hear so much, I'm calling you Councilman. Taking Mr. Burnside's job. Mr. Parker, go ahead.
Yeah, Councilperson Harris, to piggyback on what you mentioned structure. We held 2 town hall meetings earlier this year. And you will be surprised at the cross section of this community that came out for those 2 town hall meetings we had. And we had people from politicians.
Councilmember Green and I with that.
Yes, the politicians, Councilperson Freddie King showed up too, to retired people like myself. We can put something together, and you better believe it'll be a cross section. Thank you.
Yeah, I was gonna say that we came here with the.
Hey, give us your names too, as we close this segment out. Give us your names.
Okay.
That way they can have, each individual can have it on the record, and then we'll have closing remarks. Go ahead.
So we came here with an idea and a suggestion, but we can put together a structure and bring it back to you guys so that you can know exactly how it should be structured, how the members can become members, because even when we had our meetings, we asked people to become members. We had email addresses, and we inform people of everything that we're doing by using those email addresses. So a membership for something like this wouldn't be hard for us to do, and coming up with the structure, letting you know what our goals are and what our plans are and how we think it should work in the city, just like all the other plans that we have given you guys. So yes, we can put it together, but we didn't come here with a structure at this moment.
It's each of you guys can give your names for the record, because just your
Yeah, Ed Walker.
Gary Ballier. W.C. Johnson.
Annette Cranford Hamilton.
Councilmember King, any comments from you? Just listen, first of all, we put this as a item on the Criminal Justice Committee because in conversations with the chief, she said she wasn't opposed to citizen or community advisory. So the next question is, how does that look? What does it look like? How is it shaped? There are different forms throughout the country, from Oakland to the West Coast to the East Coast, North and South. There are criminal justice and criminologists in this community. We just lost Peter Sharp, but Dr. Penny
Yeah, Dr. Penny, we worked
at
with.
Southern University is a great resource. There are some retired police chiefs in this community that could talk about advisory. Advisory is not a new discussion, though. You know, in Robert Charles, if you remember the history of Robert Charles, he was shot by volunteer police and a community mob
Yeah,
in this town. He was shot over 100 times. That was in the early 1900s. They talked about a community of citizen advisory, a committee. If you could remember the incident at the 06th district, I think in the 50s or 60s, where someone was killed, community talked about an advisory committee. I wasn't here then, but I just studied the history of the city and the tales and stories that are told within our family about these issues. You guys may remember
Yeah.
when Chief Parsons was picked and there was pushback and the citizens asked for a citizens advisory committee. You guys were when Chief Pennington was picked, and the citizens, as great as Chief Pennington was, the citizens had written Mark Morial and asked for a citizens advisory or citizens input. And of course, we all know when the members of a selection committee that was formed by former Mayor Landrieu, when many of them resigned
Yeah,
because they thought when Chief Surpass was picked that committee was a sham and they really didn't have input into the committee. So it's not a new thing. Folk have been asking for it for a long time. But let's talk about the question of appointments. And folk have heard me lecture politically, especially even before I got elected, talking about the history and how things change. There are elected officials who advocate elected officials off of many committees. There are elected officials who put forth legislation removing community members from committees.
we had that.
There are elected officials who have promoted this. University presidents, the business community, subject matter experts. Well, they may have subject matter expert, but not to protect the subject that affects the people. So we've had a history of elected officials, and we will pull all of that legislation, thinking that you put the business community on something, there's more integrity, right? They're smarter than us. But university presidents, then when you put subject matter experts, well, you may be a subject matter expert in water pumps, but not in how the pumps affects the community. Maybe that little lady on the community. So remember when Eddie McTickle sat on the board? Remember when Leontine Luke sat on the board?
Yeah,
Niles Douglas, Aretha Castle Haley,
yeah, bro.
Edna May, Mildred Young,
Mhm.
June Sanchez. So there's been a movement to move those folk off the board. And then there was a movement to put elected officials. Remember when Dorothy May Taylor and Roy Glapion got on Sewage and Water Board and fought against rate increases for seniors. So there are these pretty conversations about stuff that sound good, but when you chronicle the history, right, it is taking it away from people. As if to say people are not smart enough. People don't have any value. Even we talk about giving jobs in New Orleans. We're not smart enough. We're not good enough. We're not capable. Okay. So a lot of stuff sounds good, but when you chronicle the history, it's taking it away from everyday people. So now the question is, do everyday people have the political standing and the social standing to work and the support within the institution to begin to reshape that? And that's where we are now.
Mhm.
So for this piece, the chief says she's not opposed to community or citizen advisory. So now the question is, what does that look like? How is it shaped? What input does the community have on policing issues? And when you talk about other boards and commissions, study the history of the airport and who used to sit on the airport board. Study the history of the Sewage and Water Board, who used to sit on the Sewage and Water Board. Study the history of the housing boards. and community advisory boards, and who used to sit on those boards, and you'll find out that it was the little lady with the high school degree, the gentleman who ran a little nonprofit in the local community. And then what you'll find out is that the Johnny Jacksons and the Jim Singletons and the Dorothy May Taylors, they started their political careers serving on little advisory boards, starting on community boards. So that's a whole nother movement that has to start. And even there's a movement, and some people went with it because it sounded good, to take your local politicians off of boards.
Mhm.
Now, why is that important? Because it sounded like we were depoliticizing stuff. The community bought into it. But the person closest, that elected official that's closest to the community, would seem to be political. The businessman's not political.
Right.
Exactly.
The banker's not political.
Hmm.
The subject matter expert is not political. Yeah, there's their own form of politics. So here we delve in all these rhetoric about being for the community, but at the end of the day, if you study the history of political involvement or evolution, it has evolved away from the community. I can tell you about a piece I wrote that said at some point people are going to need a passport to get to DC. Well, now you may need that passport to get to state town houses and local town halls too. So all the talk is good of who's more for the people and who's not for the people. All that's fine. But if you study the evolution of the history is, there's no one who's protected the right of that little old lady, that little man, that community group to remain part of the system. So the question is now, how do we flip that? How does it evolve moving forward? And what I would say to you guys is get with Dr. Penny, get with other subject matter experts. We will forge it, there's consensus up here, but we will forge to make sure that the chief meets with you guys to talk about what that looks like and what is a form of governance, because she has said she's not opposed to it. Thank you, Mr. WC. Any closing comments?
Want to thank you for the opportunity to be here today, and we will definitely get some structure to you, and we will converse with Dr. Penny, who we've conversed with many times, and others in our community that have worked structurally with us in bringing about a way to get the average grassroots member voice heard. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you guys very much. Bless y'all. Appreciate y'all. Ms. Khan, next item on the agenda.
Next item is a discussion and vote regarding motion number M23-495 by Councilmember Thomas. This is a motion authorizing the mayor to execute a data use agreement between the city and the administrators of the Tulane Educational Fund, granting access of de-identified NOPD crime data for fatal and non-fatal shootings to Tulane University's Violence Prevention Institute.
Is there no one here representing the administration on this item? Guys, if you could come to the table, please. State your name, who you are, and your title, and start your presentation, please.
Good morning.
Good morning, guys. Thank you all for being here.
I'm Jonathan Henderson, representing the administration. I'm the Director of Strategic Initiatives.
Yeah.
This is a data usage agreement between the New Orleans Police Department and the Tulane University Education Fund for the Tulane Violence Prevention Institute. I have with me Ms. Julia Fleckman from the Institute to discuss the agreement.
Ms. Fleckman,
Good morning.
give us your full name.
Yes, I'm Dr. Julia Fleckman. I am an assistant professor at the Tulane University School of Public Health and Tropical Medicine. I'm also the director for research and evaluation for the Tulane University Violence Prevention Institute. And I'm here today. The City Health Department was recently awarded a NIJ BGA grant to develop a community violence intervention. Those funds have been awarded to Ubuntu Village. And I was also awarded a partner NIJ grant to do some evaluation work of the program. So a major reason why we're requesting access to this data is for us to be able to measure impact over time. to see if this intervention is indeed reducing risk for fatal and non-fatal shootings in the city. That's, yeah, happy to answer any questions or.
Any questions from council members? Councilmember Harris, Councilmember Marino? This is, we all second, moved by Councilmember Harris, move towards full council. Thank you. All in favor? Ayes have it, so ordered. Thank you. Any online comments? No online comments, motion to adjourn.
Thank you, council members.
Thank you.
So moved by Councilmember Marino, second by Councilmember Harris, all in favor? The meeting is adjourned. Thank you guys so much. Thank y'all for participating. Thank you, my colleagues.